Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is time for your Friday recap, and joining me to dissect all the fun intel that is happening in the world of Web3, we got Gavin Purcell, Fonky Donk.
Yeah, it's me. I'm right here.
We also have me, I'm Carly, and I look orange right now because I'm getting married this weekend, and I got a spray tan like 2 hours ago, and I need to wait 3 hours before I rinse it off. So this is like the pre-rinse phase of the spray tan, which is always the wackiest phase of it. So Gavin was joking I'm gonna get canceled. But anyway, so if you're watching on YouTube, I apologize that I look this way. One quick announcement I'm gonna make before we hop into the episode is the damn gin, the overpriced gin. It has been sitting in the warehouse. It was delivered August 4th, but there were these like back-end tech issues that meant it was lost. And I think I'd previously given you that update. This has like literally been a Murphy's Law, like everything that can go wrong will go wrong. This goddamn gin, it's unbelievable. I have been told that they now are very clear on exactly what the solve is to make sure that it's connected to the system and that solve is happening this week. So I am officially announcing September 22nd as the redemption date because I'm pretty confident that this can be solved by then. So we're going to give it a month, just God forbid, because everything has been going wrong. Also, I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks for post-wedding. But September 22nd, I'll be like more enthusiastic about the September 22nd date once I have the text being like, great, it's sitting in the system, ready to be distributed. But September 22nd, so we'll pump that and give you more details soon once we sort of have them, but have that fully locked. But I did just want to say that I promise you guys are getting this gin.
Okay. Hold on. It's OPGDJ now. Overpriced goddamn gin. That's even better. That could be the next one. It could be like spice. The next gin could be like have a little kick, and it's the GD
Yeah,
gin.
have a little jalapeno, and it's the
yeah.
GD gin.
Yeah.
I need to start my own hot ones. It's like hot ones for
honestly.
for
Hot ones for NFT founders would be quite fascinating because, like, even if they were anonymous, I would watch that for sure. I think somebody should be doing that at some point.
Well,
we might get there.
We have a crypto media company, so
yeah,
I don't know what's stopping us.
We might get there.
We are going to dive right in because right after this, I am leaving for not my wedding today, but leaving to end up where I'm going to be ultimately for my wedding in 2 days. So actually, no, we need to hear a word from our lovely sponsors. I was going to say that, and then you distracted me. So our lovely sponsors who make the show possible, we do need to hear from them so that we can continue to have this show be possible. So please go show them some love. Y'all know the phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, in a world where too many people have had to learn that the hard way, Overpriced JPEGs is proud to partner with Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. Ledger's Nano S Plus and Nano X hardware wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, Ledger's own software for setting up your Nano device and managing your crypto assets, is the easiest way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control of your digital assets. You can use all your favorite dApps with Ledger Live, accessing 15 plus Web3 apps, including 1inch, Paraswap, Lido, and Zerion. So you can not only manage, but also grow your portfolio. And Ledger Live is available on mobile and desktop. Securing digital assets shouldn't be complicated. Ledger is as easy as it gets. Uncompromising security, effortless connectivity, full transparency, Ledger is your one-stop shop to trade and track crypto, grow your assets, and manage NFTs. Secure your future with Ledger. Visit shop.ledger.com today or check out the link in the show notes. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OpenSea, the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OpenSea user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copy mint protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OpenSea, you use OpenSea, but did you know that OpenSea now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OpenSea. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OpenSea right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. All right, Gav, we are back. Let's vibes check here for a second. I mean, just absolute capitulation.
Carnage. Yeah, it's carnage.
Carnage, that's the word I was looking for.
I mean, I guess this is like, it's funny, we're going to get into Friend.Tech, and that's something that people are excited about. But honestly, what it feels like right now is, it feels bad. Do you know what I mean? This feels pretty bad when you get into discourse and you see like what's going on. Like, I think that it's hard to say, but I know that we've talked about like the D-Gods thing. And again, no one's blaming Frank. I think you and I are on the same page that like, you know, Frank is still really good at what he does, and they did a lot, and like it's the market in general and who the people are who are kind of like asking why these things aren't coming up in value. But watching D-Gods go from like, you know, 9 now down to like under 4.
3.
3. Watching Meme Land now sit under, you know, 3 point, whatever it is, close to 3 as well. Like, you just really wonder, okay, what's going on? What's going to happen? Like, it does feel like it at the end of at least an era, right? Like, and I don't mean this is the end of everything, but it feels like the end of an era. And again, so many people out there just kind of like on the sidelines, kind of waiting and figuring out what's going on. I say so many people, but it's like whatever, the 20,000 active people that are actually in this space still. It's not that many people when you think about it. Like we're like a small town. If you think about that, like imagine NFT town where we all live in one town. It is like a tiny little burb.
It is a small town.
Yes, it is a
burb
small town.
Burb is probably overstating it.
Yes, exactly. We are.
I grew up in a town of 2,000 people, but the town that we actually like went to had like 10,000, 15,000 residents, and that's essentially NFT town.
That's NFT town. So in NFT town, everybody is talking about NFTs, but outside of that, I have to say, like, this is the thing that gets me sometimes, and I think I don't want to be a bummer on this podcast because I always believe like this is a space that's going to be big, but like the rest of the world right now has moved on from this. And I don't mean that in a way that like they don't think there's something interesting there. They don't give a shit right now.
Well,
that's the thing.
You know, it's not even just the rest of the world. It's even people who are interested in this have moved on right now. I think that's the pain.
True. No,
is that
right.
people who are into this have also moved on. And that's what has made us such a small town. Though, interestingly, what is it? 80,000 new wallets bought Friend.Tech shares over the last, I guess, since the duration of Friend.Tech. We're going to get...
We got to find some better way of...
such a Friend.Tech hater.
I'm not a Friend.Tech hater, but I have a lot of concerns about this. But no, we'll get it. Well, no.
Gav,
listen, no. You don't get to put words in my mouth. I will say we need a better clarification than wallets, because botting has become such a huge thing, and we don't. I can't tell you. I know enough people in the world that are doing decent botting stuff. Like, everybody is botting in this space now. So when you say 80, this many more wallets, like,
are you botting?
I've tried it once a long time ago, and it just didn't. It's too much work. This is what I was thinking about Friend.Tech.
It didn't give you the rush that you need.
Didn't give me the rush. But I will say, botting is now like one of the big things that's come up along with Friend.Tech is there are shitcoins that are based on botting utility, right? Like there's there's Unibot and all these other shitcoins that are now like really heavily invested in by NFT people that are about botting token stuff. So like there's botting has just become part of the culture of NFTs. So I don't think we can count new wallets anymore unless there's some sort of wallet that is separate from what our normal situation is. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I'm wondering, because that 80,000 stat I got from NFT Stats, I'd asked Jesse about it, Pollock of Base. Yeah. Like, how are you going to measure the billion new people onboarded thing? Yeah. Because for that exact reason, because wallets is kind of an iffy metric. And he was like, there are ways, though, to kind of
active wallets or
to
wallets,
really check, is it a bot? And they're imperfect. But you're probably right that the stat in this case, wherever that stat originated from, it may have been from NFT Stats or it may be from somebody else, like probably wasn't going through that full effort to like dedupe it. But
I mean, I will say NFT Stats, like I trust his ability to find interesting stats, right? Like it's in the name, but like but I think that like so I would say, like, if he's saying that, look, there's something about it, but I don't know. My feeling is like it sure doesn't feel like there's 80,000 new people in the space right now or whatever.
I agree, and that 80,000 number was I think less about that alone or the point. He was not trying to make the point that there's 80,000 people here with that. He was comparing it to the number of people, the number of wallets, like individual wallets. Are you brushing your hair in the middle of our pod?
I'm brushing my hair right now. Sorry, just want
to brush your teeth too. Get a little mouthwash going. No, but he was saying it was like 40,000 individual wallets who had bought an ETH an ETH mainnet NFT over the same period of time. So it was a comparison to look at how much more activity is happening on Friend.Tech relative to like call it ETH mainnet. I mean, obviously layer 2 is where it's at right now.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of activity.
Yeah.
Okay. As part of this just capitulation carnage, the token is down. The Blur token is down. I mean, I think when you saw that, you saw obviously the flash crash on ETH, but ETH has remained down, Bitcoin down. All of the other tokens, of course, follow. If Bitcoin sneezes, the rest of the industry gets a cold. So like every token has been down, which includes Blur, which means that the incentive to farm for Blur tokens is not there. I mean, I talked about this a number of times back when there was a lot more discourse around Blur, but just this three-legged stool, right? Where volume is predicated on farming tokens. The value of tokens is in some ways predicated on volume. If you buy the argument that over time a marketplace fee will be turned on and those profits will be redistributed to token holders, like so the only real like logic you can ascribe to like value to that token is around volume. And so it becomes this like perpetual cycle. So if any one of the legs of it falls, right, like the price of the token falls, the whole thing starts to implode, and that's exactly what's happening. As the token price falls, the incentives to actually farm are going down, which means volume's going down. So you've got a lot of Blur farmers kind of leaving the system in that way, which of course impacts volume and liquidity, which impacts people's faith in the whole system. I will say the one bright spot, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think, again, this is another thing where like with Blur, I really think this is a reflection. Obviously, yes, you're absolutely right with everything you said. It's three-legged stool. But again, to me, Blur is always a reflection of the market rather than a market maker on its own. And in part, like the reason that all of this is happening is yes, the Blur token is down. Because the Blur token is down, people have stopped farming for the token, and therefore more people are getting out of the NFT market. I think the tricky thing is if the NFT market was interesting to people still, if there were lots of people in it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I was in no way trying to suggest that Blur has caused, the
NFT
vast majority of people to leave this space by any means. I do think you can't say that they haven't been a market maker. They very clearly have been a market maker because they've incentivized the market to exist. But let's talk about one bright spot. We could have talked about it last week, but we didn't. I can't even remember why not. But Boys of Summer had a really nice pop, and I raised that. That was a NFT combination PFP and game project by Mitchell Chan, who is an OG crypto artist, and he was on the podcast, and he actually wrote a piece for us as well, and for OPJ, for the Overpriced JPEGs Substack. He also offered like an opportunity for OPJ subscribers to get on the allow list. So I hope some folks did, because you would have had a nice little pop in a space. It's come down a little bit now, but it definitely popped from its initial mint price and was getting some buzz. And it's a very cool project. So if you want to learn about it, go check out the conversation I had with Mitchell. I think it was probably 3 weeks ago now on our Friday recap episode that he came on and we chatted about Boys of Summer.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I think
the newsletter.
Please do. My thing about Boys of Summer, which I think is great, is to me, this is like the season hopefully we'll be in for a while until like, again, we get a big another wave back. But like, I'm okay with like cool project season. Do you know what I mean? Like if there's a world where we get like cool projects every couple of them a week for the next, like, my friend Poof, who actually wrote a piece for the newsletter as well recently, his theory is former EtherOrcs founder, like kind of does a lot of weird NFT stuff. He really thinks that what's coming is like small creators are going to be the next wave of NFTs, right? Like that we're moving away from this large PFP world into small creator world, which is great. I mean, I don't know if that's the same big business model, and it might be a completely different thing, but like small creators are I think the heart and soul of NFTs. And I think trying to get to that creator royalty conversation is really interesting. Like we've talked with Robbie Ferguson on Immutable podcast, which is the other shout out to Between Two Layers, which is relaunched on the Overpriced network. But the game industry really is working on this royalties piece. And I think that I still think you can draw a really direct line to if Blur is to blame for this. I think this is where Blur's kind of like original sin is, or other companies. I don't think you can blame Blur because really there were lots of people demanding this. the demand of the royalties being separate from the NFT experience, which happened, I would say, like the real version of this happened kind of mid last year. And again, this was driven by traders because the volume wasn't there and they were seeing their margins cut. In a lot of ways that was driven. To me, that's where NFTs kind of went wrong. And I will go to my grave saying that I believe that like the heart and soul of what NFTs were interesting was that you paid back the creators in perpetuity. That's the thing that makes it interesting.
The fact that you can't enforce it on the smart contract level makes this an inevitability where there's nobody to blame. Markets are going to do what markets are going to do. You referenced Robbie Ferguson because what's important to note there is that on Immutable, the layer 2 Immutable, it's baked into the protocol. So royalties are enforced at a protocol level. And that makes them inevitable on Immutable. Like there's no kind of getting around it by smart contract shenanigans. And I agree. I really like that. I think it solves the problem. Questions aren't raised like there. Royalties are just taken as a given. And I mean, you got it a lot there. I totally agree with you in terms of the small creator piece and that being on the rise, which I think is a great thing. I'm probably going to reference Jesse Pollock a number of times on this episode and continue to do so on future episodes because I really liked my conversation with him over at Base. But he talked about he's doing a lot of that right now on Base of like $1. He's buying a piece from a small creator who he thinks is interesting for $1. And he actually likened it, no pun intended, to likes and retweets. Like, creating a new system where instead of showing support for somebody by just liking their tweet or retweeting it or sharing their post or whatever, you actually throw them $1 in the form of either buying a piece of their work.
Microtransactions, right? That's what we've been trying forever on the internet. Yeah.
Totally. Which has always was one of the original, I would say, bullish cases for NFT for crypto was the idea that you could actually do micropayments suddenly, and that's really interesting in a media context. It's really interesting in a creator context. You obviously see Twitter moving in that direction. I mean, right now you have the revenues being paid out via from ad revenue, and also you can subscribe to somebody's page. But the fact that they're looking to integrate crypto in these various ways, like it's such a no-brainer that that's where they're thinking about moving. And this. I mean, this all lends us well to Friend.Tech, but let's save the Friend.Tech convo because that'll be our main story. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's quickly just touch on the OpenSea royalty piece.
Yes. Which is good. That's exactly what this is a good transition to that too.
It's a great transition to that. I hate having this conversation because it feels
disingenuous,
so intractable. It just feels like I don't have a good take on this is the truth. And so for people who don't know, I'm sure folks know, but OpenSea did what was probably coming for a long time now, which is they officially basically dropped royalties to zero. So OpenSea had put something forward previously, folks probably followed this, where they had something called the operator filter. And the idea was that if you had the operator filter on, you were blocking marketplaces that didn't enforce royalties. And so if you had the operator filter on, royalties were, in theory, but there were workarounds around this, enforced on Blur. And, if you enforce royalties on Blur, OpenSea would then enforce royalties as well. Well, they came out recently and said that the operator filter isn't working. And so sort of by default, royalties are going to go to zero anyways. Their concern clearly is bleeding market share, which they have been doing. And so they're like, we're just going to go where this is going anyway, and we're going to drop royalties to zero. Artists, of course, understandably quite upset about this. You had Yuga come out and say, okay, well, we are actually now pulling all of our support from Seaport, which is not just something that OpenSea uses, but that other, Looks Rare uses things from Seaport. Blur does as well, I believe. So it's, and they said starting February 24th or whatever the date is, basically OpenSea had set a date at which all existing collections that have been using the operator filter, they will be that'll be sunset in February of 2024. And so that is when Yuga says they will be pulling from Seaport. And for me, where I do think it gets a little uncomfy is that they still have this marketplace fee. And I believe businesses have to make money somehow, and this is how OpenSea makes money. So I don't begrudge them having some level of marketplace fee, but I'd be really interested in seeing the chart that shows here's how many buyers, users, whatever you gain by dropping creator fees to zero. And then what would happen if you dropped your marketplace fee by 1% or dropped it by 1% and made the artist fees? Like, what is the point at which you have like maximum profits, call it, right? Like, is 2.5% for you and 0 for creator fees like truly what it is? Like, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, but there's a business calculus that's being made here. And the problem is I don't actually know the internal workings. Like, I don't know if they're being greedy or not. I don't know. I don't know what their books like. Like, I don't know if they're actually charging the absolute minimum that they possibly can to continue to operate as a business responsibly. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I think OpenSea got caught a little bit in the, number one position always becomes the villain sort of scenario. But I also think that this goes back to what I just said. There was a sea change in NFTs when this royalty thing happened. And again, maybe it was inevitable because it was, decentralization and making sure that like this stuff couldn't be enforced on chain. But the sea change really was, these were an interesting product that paid back the creator, or in like something like Yuga's instance, entire businesses built their business model on, right? Like businesses, when you think of this is, again, it's like the thing that's so shocking to me is that, and again, I know, as to your point, they didn't throw this away, but the one thing about NFTs that truly were interesting from a business model perspective is the fact that, and what I mean, like, of course, the value can go up and down and like it's a tradable asset, but the one thing—
But the recurring revenue from royalties.
Yes, and this is something that doesn't exist in any other thing. Like, that is a new paradigm technology, and when that goes away, both for the individual artist and for the larger companies, you've just kind of thrown out all the work we've done the last couple of years. Now, I don't mean because I want to say, like, the tricky thing with this is there's also like the decentralization maxis, right? When on one side you've got, hey, the truth of the matter is this, but I want to kind of throw back to what the internet was like. As an old man, I'll tell you this: when the internet launched in the mid 90s to late 90s, there were a lot of internet maxis, right? When I say that, I mean like people who did not want the mainstream to come on board because the internet was something that was pure. It was text. It was not video. It was not pictures. It was not AOL. It was something much more pure. It was like connecting, smart people to each other. And then the internet grew, and suddenly it became a much bigger deal, and there were more people on it. Part of me is thinking, and by all those people are really concerned about like protocols and TCP/IP, all this stuff back then was a big deal. And guess what? No one gives a shit about it now. And I only say that because I think that ultimately, as much as decentralization has been a part of the conversation here, ultimately no one is going to care about the idea of decentralization on certain parts of this. Now, I know that there's going to be maxis out there forever, but if they figure out how this works, I just don't believe it's going to be a thing.
At a certain point, what does blockchain really offer that's new, if not decentralization?
I think it offers, okay, let me think about this. Because
this is why decentralization is important to me, because it's like, this is the value prop. Otherwise, centralized ledgers exist.
Sure, but what I think it can do is the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a technical person, but the idea of like as an individual launching into the world a contract that can interact with a larger contract that is connected to all these people. Decentralization in the way that like it is not owned by one entity is great. But what I'm saying is there needs to be some sort of capacity for, I guess, I don't know. It's confusing to me.
I think it's about partial. It's like partial decentralization is what we're talking about. Right?
Yes,
that's sort of what this operator filter that OpenSea was trying to do was.
Yeah.
It was providing partial decentralization, and it's that it doesn't have to. Your thing is like it doesn't have to be purely decentralized in the way that like a maxi or a purist would suggest that it has to be.
Yes. And by the way, a lot of people say then you're not really doing crypto. You're not really doing, but also like there's a reason why we have society laws. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
there is, and I just mostly am coming at this as somebody who's very disappointed that I thought there was a great business model for both artists and companies, and that's now gone. That's all.
Yeah. Well, also, but we never had it to begin with. I think that this is where like it didn't ever exist. It was always a social construct. It wasn't like it was something that worked within the tech that stopped working. It actually was like never a baked in thing. Here's why I hate this conversation. Here's why I hate the OpenSea conversation. It wasn't. It was always a social construct.
But the social construct, yes, but it was a social construct that all the people that came on board thought in part was a technical construct because they weren't
Correct.
aware of what the possibility was.
Right, but
and
it wasn't.
Yeah, but those people were sold a bill of goods that it was. And this is where, when I say those people, I mean there's two different kinds of people that came into this world. There's the hardcore Bitcoin / crypto people that were here before. And then with NFTs, the special thing that happened, I think, is you onboarded a lot of artists and you onboarded a lot of people who, for lack of a better word, are artists, but maybe are more business people who aren't like specialized in the crypto side. They thought it was. And you're right, it wasn't. But I think they thought it was. And I think that's to them what made it interesting.
I know. I get that. I was somebody who came in because the royalty concept was very interesting to me. Now, I will say I learned earlier than it became a conversation that it wasn't enforced in the smart contract level. And I sort of had that moment of like, that seems problematic. And then forgot about it because it wasn't until 6 months later that they actually went to zero. And so I was like, I guess there's another, I just kind of like hand waved over it for a while. But this is what I say. The reason I hate this conversation, the OpenSea one in particular, is because there's just too much I don't know. And I was starting to say this earlier, but I really want to hit this point home because businesses have to stay alive. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know. If OpenSea could not stay alive while charging an artist fee because they were going to lose all of their market share, then obviously they have to do this, right? Then I am totally on their side, right? If this set of facts is true, if 2.5% is the minimum viable marketplace fee that they must charge to be a viable business. Right. And if they were going to lose their business and no longer be a viable business if they charged creator fees, then I support OpenSea in this decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But I don't know if that's true. And this is why this conversation sucks to me because I can't form an opinion because I don't have enough of the facts. Yeah. And I understand the artists, their frustration, and I think they're probably just not thinking about it on this level, frankly, but feel like corporations do this all the time. I'm sure they're making a ton of money and they're screwing us. And that also might be true. And that's where it's like, oh, come on, OpenSea. But I don't know. I just don't know. And so I find this conversation very frustrating because I understand the need to run a business and I understand the frustration of creators. And because I'm not in the OpenSea books, and I don't have access to, what they look like. It's hard for me to say strongly in any direction what the right move was here.
Let me ask you a question. If you were OpenSea and say you had, let's play a game. let's play OpenSea capitalist game. If you're an OpenSea and you have, I don't know, $50 million in the bank, which is conceivably still possible based on what they've raised. And
they definitely have good runway.
Okay, great.
They're fine on runway.
Does it not make sense to, at this point, to try to kind of like double down on the people that you say you support and really, now granted, we know some of the OpenSea team and they're trying to do these drops and all that stuff, but like, does this, it kind of reminds me of how bad people are at timing sometimes in this space or at managing communications. And like, does this seem like a time to kind of like come out and do this? Now, the other side
Here's
of this,
my counter.
Yeah. What is it?
My counter to that timing argument, so you're making the case that, hey, there's not that many people here, right? Like super serve, it's the Frank thing. Super serve the community that is.
That's exactly
here.
right. Yes.
Okay. Here's the counter argument. The counter argument is never in history, whatever, right? Have fewer people cared about NFTs right now. So yeah, the people that are still here. But OpenSea, to me, given their focus on redeemables, they are trying to build like an e-commerce store. They are doubling down on redeemables, which we've talked about, which I think is smart, right? They're partnering with Puma to do a sneaker drop. Like, I think they are trying to be Shopify, or that's maybe not the best analogy, but like they're trying to be an e-commerce store for digital twins and other kind of digital goods. And so they're saying, yeah, people are going to be pissed, but there's never been fewer people in this space than there are now. So like in some ways, in a year, if this market comes back, people will have forgotten about it because the people who come back in won't have been here while this is happening. And we actually don't think PFPs are the future of this market anyway. So the PFP creators who are going to Betty, who's going to be really pissed and stomp and rightfully so. You know what? PFPs aren't really the future. The future is these digital physical twins. We want to court
That's interesting.
I think, and I have no idea, but that's what I imagine their thinking is.
And then business model on those, do you believe it's just going to be like an eBay thing where they're just going to take their marketplace fund? Yeah, that's interesting.
I guess so.
Yeah, sorry, that made me think of something which was really interesting because I had an idea a while ago, but like there is a world where this opens the door for a new marketplace, right? We have Blur, which is the traders marketplace. We have OpenSea now, which is clearly not the artist marketplace. I mean, you have Manifold, which is really more of like it's not really a marketplace. It's more like it's like a tool that's like a launching tool. Like, is there an artist marketplace that people use? It's an I guess
here's what I think is going to happen. I've debated this back and forth in the years I've spent in this space. Is like, do you have like an everything store like an OpenSea, or do you have just very niche marketplaces?
Yeah, exactly.
I talked to somebody recently who's heavily involved with a lot of fashion brands, and said they're all still they like the royalty model. They want the royalty model. So what a lot of these big fashion houses are looking to do is, yes, they're going to launch digital twins. Yes, they're going to launch all this stuff, and they're going to do it on a private marketplace. And with the bet being that, once there's enough demand for digital goods, they can just have their own marketplaces that enforce royalties, and basically going max centralization. Or, they maybe open it up to other marketplaces that enforce royalties. But basically the bigger players who can command market attention will go that route. What's interesting is you and I covered Lamborghini, which did that. Lamborghini has its own bespoke marketplace. National Geographic tried to do it to complete failure, but Lamborghini did it. And they're just too early because people don't want digital goods yet. Yeah. So even if you're Lamborghini, like, your fans don't care about having your NFT. But once there's enough appetite for digital things, then I think you can start to have these very specific niche marketplaces spin up by players who drive market attention and energy. And then they'll just have their own bespoke marketplaces. Now, I think there still could be a world for like an everything store, like an OpenSea, that there could still be a place for them. But I think that's where marketplaces go over time.
That makes sense.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about. Web3 Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see, with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it.
We've talked about royalties again.
Here we are. We're still here. Well, actually, and let's do one final story before we move into our main story, which is Friend.Tech. I want to talk about Nate Chastain officially being
Speaking
convicted.
of royalties, yeah, exactly. An OpenSea.
Yeah, so Nate Chastain, folks might remember, I mean, this story's been playing out for a long time. I want to say over a year at this point.
Yeah.
Nate was an employee at OpenSea who had the good fortune of determining what NFT projects got featured on the OpenSea homepage. So when you would land on OpenSea, usually it was art pieces, but you would have these projects that would be on the homepage. And obviously during the bull market, that drove a lot of energy and activity. And if you were featured on the OpenSea homepage, those projects would do better. And this motherfucker, Nate, was buying the projects before they would go on the OpenSea homepage.
Yeah.
And so was making money, obviously, when they then inevitably had a price pump by doing that. And, it's not dissimilar. There was a Coinbase employee who did the same thing, where he told family and friends in advance when Coinbase was going to list a new token, because if a new token got announced that it was listed on Coinbase, the price would shoot up. Same thing. And he was trying to escape to some foreign country. Now, what's so interesting about the Nate case is I've met Nate before, and I talked to him a little bit, and he kind of tried to pass it off like, I really wasn't thinking about it. Like, the truth was, like, I thought these projects were cool, so I was buying them. And then because I thought they were cool, I wanted to put them on the homepage. Like, he kind of tried to spin it to me as this, like, very innocuous thing. And I could see that. Like, I think there could be some level of okay, you liked this project, so you bought the project, and then, you know, it's sort of like me on the podcast, right? It's like if I like something, I might buy it, and then I might talk about it on the podcast. I usually don't, because I don't actually buy that much, in part because I don't want to have like the air of impropriety here. But where that very benign, like sweet spin on things falls short is that he was like using other wallets. Like he had like a whole wallet, multiple wallet scheme set up to pull this off. And of course he didn't pull it off because people discovered it. But so it's like, okay, you clearly knew on some level something you were doing was wrong, or you just be buying from your main wallet and then putting it on OpenSea. Like you can't pretend total ignorance here. Like, oh, I just really didn't think enough about it, because you had a setup to try and pull it off.
I mean, I think the Nate story gets to the heart of like the people that were in this space in the beginning, and I don't necessarily, I'm not judging a lot of people, but like there was a lot of people in this space who like for the first time discovered financialization, right? Like I think the interesting thing is like there's probably a lot of people who were like artists and weirdos that came into this space, and suddenly they were thrown into this world that a lot of like financialization people were set up for and have been drilled in the regulations and all that stuff. Like you have to like disclose or all this stuff ahead of time. My gut is telling me he saw a thing. It's like, whoa, I can make money doing this. And he probably was like, not aware that it was wrong, but like he's not a person that like grew up planning to do this again and again and again.
No. I don't think he's like some master, sociopathic con artist. He was sentenced to 3 months. And I think he has to pay a $50,000 fine or something. I mean, He made more than $50,000 by buying and selling at least 45 NFTs he knew would be featured on OpenSea's homepage. I mean, look, in the grand scheme of things, $50,000 isn't even like that much money. Like,
no,
it
that's
is,
what I mean.
But it's also like it's not. It's like, and I'm sure this shit is worth nothing now. So, but it's still not nothing. I mean, look, I'd love a little cool extra 50K in the bank account. So, it's just like a do the right thing. It reminds me of the Warren Buffett line that's like, I want you to, if what you're doing right now was splash all over the front page of
would you
your
be
local
okay with it?
paper, for all of your friends and family, like, would you feel good about it? And that as like a really good litmus test for how you act, like this is clearly not something he would have wanted splashed on page. Now, the other thing that's interesting is it's being called an insider trading case. And initially, there's sort of a funny thing of like, how could it be an insider trading case if we haven't established that NFTs are securities definitively? Yeah. And I believe it's true that the SEC can only go after insider trading cases where the underlying asset is a security. But I believe
is that right?
the DOJ,
that's interesting.
I was trying to look this up. I feel like I read this somewhere. I think I may have even read it by Matt Levine, but then I couldn't find it like explicitly. It wasn't something I was able to like Google and easily find. I think the DOJ can go after insider trading cases with a broader mandate. Like it doesn't have to be a stock or a security for them to go after this. But that may all be moot, because what he's actually been convicted of is fraud and money laundering. Wire fraud. Right. So I think they're calling it an insider trading case, but I think the actual things he's been convicted of are wire fraud and money laundering, and he'll spend 3 months in jail and then come out and who knows what he'll do next. But it's definitely an interesting one, and like wild. Like in any other circumstances, would this guy like end up in prison? No, it was because they're trying to make him a symbol of this very frothy space. Once frothy space, and I think trying to prevent people from doing something similar, which is good. Like I think good. We should prevent people from doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Let's get to our main story today. Friend.Tech.
Yes,
and
Friend.Tech.
I'll say this. We also, another thing we could talk about is Recur shutting down, but I'm not going to have us talk about that because John Rogers and I talked about it pretty extensively for next week's Blockbuster episode that's going to come out on Wednesday. So we won't cover that. We're going to close it out here with Friend.Tech. Great. All right, Gav, you claim you're not a Friend.Tech hater. Should we explain to people what Friend.Tech is? Let's do it real fast.
Yeah, do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'll do it. So Friend.Tech is an app. It's a mobile app, although even that is strange. You don't actually you don't go to the App Store and download a mobile app.
No.
You go to Friend.Tech on your browser on your phone, and then you save it to your homepage. and then that's how you end up on the app, which I've never seen before, and it is kind of interesting.
It's a way around the App Store, by the way, just so you know. Like, that's part of the reason it happens. They don't have to do the cut. They don't have to get it approved, all that stuff. But I keep on. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, that I assumed had to have been the reason they were doing it, because you're talking about a lot of exchanges, like a lot of trades happening on this platform. So that 30% Apple fee would have been a nightmare. They would never have gotten approved through the Apple Store.
They would not have gotten
Apple Store
approved.
Would never have let them be on the Apple Store.
Yeah.
So in any case, and then you link up to your Twitter account, and you are instantly you have to buy one key, like one share of your own self. Like, I bought a share of Carly, basically a key. They're called keys, these shares, in Carly. And then as soon as that happens, I have my own chat room where I can chat and type, and anybody who wants to come into my chat room then has to buy shares or keys of me. And so I joined. I felt late to the party because this has been obviously the hottest thing, and I didn't get on earlier in part because I've been in crazy wedding prep mode. But I have to say, I was surprised by how instantly, like, hooked I kind of was. And this is probably because I have some level of following. So I basically got on the app, did the thing, bridged my ETH, did all the whatever, put it down, kept doing some research, pulled it back up, and suddenly like 15 people had bought keys, and I had made like $200 or whatever I made. And I was like, oh, holy shit. You know what I mean? It was like, what the fuck? And now also I instantly had that feeling of like, oh, now I need to do good
By the way,
stuff
this
on here
is
to
me.
make it worth it.
This is me being the Jack Nicholson gif where you're like, yes, because that's what they're doing. They got you. They 100% got you. They understand.
They 100% did.
This is a fascinating thing about Friend.Tech. So let's keep going. But the one thing I do want to say,
let me end this final thing in the explanation, which and maybe this is obvious to people, but basically these keys that you buy into somebody's chat room essentially, or into this person, can be resold.
Yes.
So the whole premise here is buy in early to somebody cool.
Yes.
Because then other people want to buy into them, and you'll be able to sell out of it.
Yes.
So it's really just tokenizing individuals.
Yes. Okay, I have a question. Can I ask you one question about the details on this? So the thing I don't fully understand yet is there's a bonding curve about the tokens, right? So how does that work? And like, is there an unlimited amount of tokens, or do the tokens get more expensive as more come up?
Yes. So I don't know how the bonding curve works. And I was like not even going to try and look into it, because I knew even if I did, I probably wouldn't understand it. This is one of my criticisms, though, is I think how seemingly quickly the price goes up. So for example, I don't know what my key started at, 0.001,
I think
whatever
they
it is,
start
right?
at 0.01, I think.
Maybe it's
but
0.01.
I don't know enough. Yeah.
My key is now up to 0.06 or so, 0.054 or something.
Just wait till this airs, Carly. Suddenly you're going to be, you got to disclose. Don't buy for speculation purposes.
This is the first few people who bought immediately are like, Carly's going to 0.1, her keys are going to 0.1, like, ship it, like, whatever, bookmark this kind of a thing.
I have so much to say about this.
And I'm instantly, of course, like, oh my God, I want to do right by these people, right? Like, I want to make the thing go to 0.1. Like, I feel this, it's really fascinating. And and immediately I'm like, God, you think you get a dopamine rush from tweets, from likes and retweets? Like, nothing hits like the dopamine rush of somebody who just bought one of my keys. Like, it's a very strange thing. But this is what I say. So it went up pretty quickly. And what was interesting is I saw somebody else who had more key holders than I did. I have 16, 17 key holders, but I saw somebody who had 20 key holders, but their keys were cheaper than mine. So that's where I don't entirely understand. It may be like a time frame thing. Like if they got 20 key holders over the course of 4 days versus I got 17 key holders in the span of 20 minutes, I think that probably makes the price go up faster. So it's not just about like number of key holders. It's like, if, like I was trending for a hot second, you know what I mean? And so like there was demand for within a confined period of time for my stuff, which made the price go up. But I just think it goes up too quickly. And I know that this money doesn't mean anything, but like, I wanted to go see what other rooms were like, or other chat rooms were like. So I was like looking on some people that I'd maybe want to go to. Derek Edwards, somebody told me Derek Edwards had a cool room. So I was like, all right, let me go check that out. But even, I think Derek's like 0.12. When you start doing the math, which I've been trying to do lately because I didn't do that enough in the bull market and got myself burned on it, of like, this is $200. Like, I'm going to pay $200 to watch Derek basically tweet, and I know him personally, I could text him anytime I want. Like, no, of course not. Of course that's not how I'm spending $200. Like, that's a silly way to spend $200. So, and Frank, same thing. Like, Frank's room, you know, to get into Frank's room is like $500 or something.
Yeah.
And you know, upwards of, I think
Kobe is like, Kobe was at 2, I think, at 2 ETH at some point.
it's down now. I think it's like 1.3 when I checked this morning. But yeah, the point is, like, $2,000 to get into Kobe's chat room.
Where all he's doing is shitting on it, by the way. That's from what I've heard. All Kobe's doing really is shitting on Friend.Tech mostly. But
and this is where I think the model breaks, because
let's talk. The model is
a
very
yes.
Let's talk about model is a very like extensive word to use for this, because I
generous term.
Experiment. I would say this is an experiment, right?
Yeah.
And I want to. I believe this is a really interesting experiment, and the reason I believe this is an interesting experiment because I really do truly believe that we have to come up with some other way to value people's contributions, that they can get paid for what they do in life outside of advertising. Because as we've seen, the advertising model breaks entire social networks. It delivers content in a weird way. I also am not 100% sure that I trust the algorithms to deliver. Like, one of the things, as somebody who, you and I are both content makers, the really frustrating thing about working with the algorithms of the social media world is that they push stuff based on whatever's going to be the thing that they think is going to drive engagement. And by pushing it, it drives more engagement. And oftentimes that's like aggro people.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in some ways, this world is the world of like, I create a brand or myself and I tell people what I am. They come in, they buy me, and I can be that thing to them. That's like the dream of this thing, right? Like that there is a world where I can pay whatever, at the beginning, it's X number of dollars to Carly. I can be part of Carly's world. I'm going to get exclusive content and information from her. Right now, though, this thing is literally people jumping on this thing, buying stuff early, and then like often buying and dumping, right? Buying and dumping. Yes. In fact, I know a bunch of people who are my friends in the Midcurve Discord who got on this very early. And there is a lot of people who really understood this was going to be a boom in the beginning. And now I think it's settled. And now I think people are trying to figure it out. I'm not 100% sold. The app scared me in the beginning. So I was on it early enough. I mean, when I say on it, I mean, I didn't launch a token or whatever you call it. What do you call it when you launch something? A key. I didn't launch a key. But I believe that it was interesting to play around with. So I got on and play around with it. The app felt so not professional to me.
Oh my God, it is so bad.
Yeah. That I was like immediately turned off. And I don't really want to spend my time. Like, there are people out there who have made over 100 ETH doing this, right? Which is crazy to me that like, but I don't have the time to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm more interested in the technology behind it. But when the tech is this bad in the beginning, the concept's cool, but I just don't know if I buy into this part of it.
It's I literally, after being on it for like 20 minutes, the first thing I tweeted was like, imagine what Friend.Tech would be if the app worked.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah, exactly.
Damn, this would be kind of, you know, this would be a really interesting product if the damn thing worked. I mean, I still, you know, I go onto the trending page to see who's trending. And by the way, we haven't even gotten into like the OnlyFans element of this, which is like, if you scroll through the trending page, you know, you have profile pictures on here and they're pulled from, I guess, your Twitter profile picture, but it's like Kobe and like David Hoffman and like, you know, male, you know, degen influencers, and then it's hot girls who show cleavage.
Of course.
I was like, damn, I'm really doing this wrong. You know, like I am sitting on just a gold mine here.
You could be both. You could be both.
Well, but what's so funny? But it's a text only app.
Yeah.
So I actually asked in my chat. I was like, "Can you explain so this is what I'm saying is, but I can't get into any of them. Like if on the trending page, all you see all these OnlyFans girls, and I was like, obviously I'm going to click in and like see what the deal is. I'd have to buy the token, which I wasn't going to do because some of them are expensive. But I was just trying to click in, and it just crashes the app for me. I mean, it doesn't end it, but it just says reload. I had never actually like get anywhere with it. So the app is terrible. But then, but I was asking in my chat, I was like, hey, like, this is a text-only platform. Like, what do people think they're getting when they're paying literally an ETH for some hot girl's chat room?
Yeah.
And apparently people are posting outside links. Right. Like basically, if you pay to be in the chat room, you can get the link to go elsewhere to see their private photos or whatever. But they were saying it's a broken model because people will just share that
Yeah, of course.
Once they get it, they just share it, and then it's getting exploited. So it's, it doesn't really work. And then there's people betting on the fact that they're gonna add photos to it, and then you just have OnlyFans. So then it's really like, what are we doing? So the God's honest truth is, I can't wrap my head entirely around it yet. This obviously will not last. People are buying this stuff to speculate. Nobody is going to pay $2,000 to get into a chat room. By the way, also, the most interesting thing about this to me, that in the sense that it was like the most surprising, you can't see the other people's messages in the chat.
Yeah.
So I, as a chat room owner, I can see everybody's messages. But when you're just a participant in a chat, you can only see your messages and the host's messages.
Yeah.
So the host will be responding to 5 different people, but you won't know the context. Like, you don't know what the other person is saying to them. You just see them replying, which is quite strange. So in that way, like, it's interactive, but in a very strange way. So this clearly cannot stand. Nobody's going to continue to pay $2,000 to be in that chat. The only reason somebody's paying $2,000 to see Kobe shit on this app is in the expectation that somebody else will pay $3,000 to see Kobe shit on this app. And so in that way, it's a total Ponzi. But there is something broadly interesting about this.
Oh, yeah.
Paying for content, buying a share of you model.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to wrap my head around is there a nugget here? Is there a core to this that will remain? And I don't know. I mean, certainly we have OnlyFans. Certainly we have Twitter. Certainly we have this pay directly for content model.
Yeah.
But this idea that you can own the share of it. Well, first of all, there's securities questions that I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big thing, right? Like, all
that's the biggest thing is like, how is this not a security?
Exactly.
So that I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Of like, is there a bigger model here that this is starting to get at?
Do you know what I think the interesting model here is, which is what we talked about, is the royalty model, right? Because in this model, you not only get you're not getting paid based on, you are getting paid based on how many people are buying your shares, but also you're getting paid when the shares trade, right? And that is something that is a big thing that we don't have anywhere else, which is, okay, I'm going to put out 1,000 shares of myself into the world. If I'm on Twitter, a company is paying me based on what I'm doing, right? Like, that's the model there. Like, okay, they look at my traffic and they pay me based on my traffic and X number of dollars. If I'm on OnlyFans, like, it's the same thing. I can charge based on whatever me, right? Like, it's my instinct, like hotness. But this is kind of interesting in that, like, you could have a world where you could almost have, like, let's say you have 1,000 shares. You could almost have seasons in some ways where people would come back and buy you or hold you based on what you were going to deliver for a content standpoint. It's a very different model. And then by adding sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, finish your thought.
No, I was going to say, you add in the royalties part of this. It's fascinating. I think this is completely illegal, probably, but I mean, like, I think this, and I think also the one thing I'll say is, I think this is, I've seen this in the shitcoin world, and I don't know Racer very well, the guy who made it, and I think people think of him pretty highly in the kind of overall crypto space. But in the shitcoin world, there are often people who come up with ideas like this, which are novel ideas, and they're kind of fascinating. And the idea is really interesting, but then the thought process never gets past launch into 3 months because they're not thinking of it that way. They're just literally thinking of it as, how do we make a token go up and then make something interesting and kind of like, extract value in some ways. I'm not saying Racer is that person who created this, but
I've heard some mixed things about Racer. I mean, I feel mixed usually with anonymous teams in general, and I have no way to verify this. So please nobody take this as fact about this person. But like, somebody was saying like, that they have a tendency to build cool stuff, but like the second the luster wears off, they abandon it. That they're not necessarily like a long-term,
which is what exactly
kind of a builder.
Yeah.
Which this totally smells like, to be honest. Again, like the app, it was clearly launched, quickly and to get something out there. But so here's my pushback on your royalty comment.
Sure.
Why, as the creator, would I prefer that to a subscription? Like, the problem with the royalty model is that usually that means there's a finite number. So if you have if 20,000 people want to be in my chat, but there's 10,000 keys.
Yep.
That makes the price go up. I get a 5% royalty on that price going up, but I'd probably make more money if I just charged all 20,000 people $20 to get into my chat. And the counter, I think, to that would be, well, now you have 10,000 people who are also incentivized to make the price go up because they're going to get a cut when they resell it. And that's the bet. And I don't think we've really been able to prove out in one direction or another. I mean, again, this is, putting aside the idea that this is probably illegal. But like, forgetting that for a second, like if it was legal, let's say. And that's always been where my brain is sort of broken, and was something that I also think I hand waved over in the beginning of this podcast when I would talk about it, because I was like, all right, well, like let me squint and see if I can see it. And now I'm more in the fuck it phase where I'm like, I don't know, make it make sense. Like I just, you don't think that, and I don't know this for a fact, but like Brendan Mulligan, who started Pre-Mint, right, and did Pre-Mint passes, like you don't think he would have rather just had like an annual subscription at this point and not have to deal with like these pass holders now who are pissed that the price didn't go up? And the other thing that worries me about this,
I have one thing about this.
Respond to that.
What if there was a world that the 1,000 keys, and I think 10,000 is too many for something like this, because we're not talking about, whatever, it could scale. Maybe
hypothetically. I'm talking about like creators in general having a model like this. So you could be talking about a Taylor Swift who would.
What if the 10,000 keys are access keys that do charge you, and they're not just one-time fee pays. Yeah. But there is a recurring revenue stream built up. And again, the tech on this is essentially never going to probably get there. But like, imagine a world where you pay for a share, and owning a share is the same thing as like owning like a country club membership. And there was a limited number of them. I bought a country club membership, and now I have to pay the ongoing fees that the country club is charging. And maybe it's not that much, but maybe it is something. But in order to be part of the country club, but also I had to pay the initialization fee for it too.
I mean, look, here's the bottom line. If you think about all the money that is going to be spent on your content, that's a finite pool, let's call it, right? There's going to be $100,000 spent on Carly content. This is obviously entirely hypothetical. There's no way around, if you're letting other people make some of that 100,000, right? It's not going to you. And I guess that's my point, because this is not something.
It's a sharing of the value. Yes.
Right. And which great. And like frankly, like that's a very cool, that might happen because fans might start demanding that if enough people do it. But because the value is coming in a recurring sense, like it's every day that I as a creator go on and decide to create value for this thing, why wouldn't the creator just want to get all the value for themselves in some way, because they're the one putting and maximize that value every day? It's different than shoes. Like the reason that you want a royalty on a shoe is because that shoe is going to be sold regardless, and you weren't going to get any money on it, or you were going to get just a fraction of it. If there's a new person who wants my content, I could just take all that money. Like they don't need to. You see what I'm saying? I don't know.
Why do companies go public? That would be my response to you. Why would a company ever go public?
To capitalize. They want more money. They want to
So this is where I think we have to think about like how an individual creator starts to think about the idea of this. Now, again, I think the big thing we have to be aware of is that in general.
Oh, that's an interesting. That's good. That's a good
99% of people are using this to speculate right now. But think about this, and the 1% of person that's taking this very seriously, and say Friend.Tech was smart enough that they could figure out video and text and all sorts of other things. That is something that is going to be that could be a big deal. But if you were a creator that had built up an audience and built up something interesting, it's kind of like a paid newsletter, right? Like in some ways, imagine a world where you have a really intense audience, and there's an audience here, there's an audience at things like Bankless or Milk Road or things like that. I think you're right. The one-time fee is not going to work, because I think then you're in the same scenario you're in with many of these NFT projects, which is you buy in and then you're delivering value forever. I think you have to have some sort of scenario where you buy in, and again, it's like the country club model, and you have to continually pay to keep up the golf course. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have the golf course fee, then you're not going to play golf.
So the going public analogy is interesting, right? Because I do think what you're getting at there is the heart of this whole thing, which is creators are becoming companies and entities in and of themselves. And and I heard somebody say, well, companies are just people anyway. So like that's sort of always what humanity has been doing. But here's why right now it doesn't compute to me, right? Because a company that goes public has other revenue, right? Like in theory, I mean, obviously part of the lesson we've learned in this downturn is that companies should actually be profitable, and plenty of these companies were never profitable, didn't actually have. But like companies have revenue streams, right? Like the going public is actually like essentially a one-time capitalization event.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so as a content creator, what I'm just trying to wrap my head around is if what I'm selling is my content, why would I want to limit the number of people who can pay me directly for that? And that's sort of what we're talking about. Like, again, it goes back to if there's 20,000 people who want my content, why wouldn't I just charge 20,000 people $10 instead of 10,000 people getting it for $30 maybe, and then they resell it for $40, but I only get 5% of that $40, so I'm getting $2 instead of getting the original 20. Like, it's just this is why brands don't like secondary markets, because they don't like when people come in and buy the Jordans and then sell them at a higher price later, because they wanted to sell it. They wanted to get that initial cut, and they can't help that. Like, they can't stop that. But as a creator, if what I'm giving is sort of on this ongoing basis, like, why wouldn't I just want everybody to pay me directly? That's where this model always just kind of has broken down for me. Yeah. But who knows? Like, I think of somebody like Grimes. There was an interesting profile of Grimes in Wired recently.
I love her. She's awesome.
She's so awesome.
Yeah.
And I met her once very briefly when I was with Andrew Yang, and he really liked her as well. And they had a conversation. I wasn't there for most of it, but she just seemed great. So I'm a big fan of hers. But she, she's somebody who experiments. Like, I'm not saying there isn't a chance that some creator finds a way to make this work by really having an army of 10,000 people who are super galvanized, which makes it such that the price goes so much, so that 5% fee is actually a higher price than what they could have charged somebody directly, Like, what would that math be? $20 is 5% of what number? 400?
Yeah.
Something like that. Right? Yeah. So like, maybe there is a world where there's a 5% royalty, and I could charge, if I just charged everybody directly, I could charge them $20, but because I have these 10,000 super motivated fans, they're able to start getting $450 out of it, and I'm getting a little bit more from that 5% royalty than I would get if I directly charged them. But I just think that's going to be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, honestly, it's an interesting experiment. I think that the financialization of people is kind of scary too in my mind, right? Like, this is the other thing we have to be aware of, is that, like, I don't necessarily, and again, it's, of course, OnlyFans is the first people that, OnlyFans type people that first people that pop up there, because that is the clearest and most, the oldest model of monetization of people. Is the monetization of people. And I think that that's the part that, so what you just said made me think of something else too, because I know we have to wrap up soon, but like,
I gotta get married,
Yeah, exactly. One of the tricky things with crypto is you get to the money right away. And that is a really interesting problem for some companies. Instead of having to like make the thing, instead of having to like build something, instead of having to really make something, you can get to the money right away. And having the money right away is great in some ways. It is a giant burden in other ways. And I think the question becomes is, you're on Friend.Tech, you're taking it seriously. You're not just like there for the pump and dump. You're trying to create content. Guess what?
By the way, I'm taking it seriously. Everybody go buy my key. Like, kind of kidding, but I am on there.
Yeah. By the way, we should say it's on Base, right? You have to do it on Base. Yeah. So you have to have ETH on Base to buy.
You've got a bridge.
Yeah, you got a bridge, which happens on Coinbase's Google Base bridge. It comes up, right? Like,
what I did, because I'm such a paranoid, I went to their Twitter. I went to Build on Base, which is their Twitter. Then I went to their website that they put in their bio in their Twitter. Yeah. And right there on their main website, which I believe is base.org, but again, don't take my word for it. Just go to their Twitter and get the right link. Yeah. It says bridge, and then you just click the bridge link that's right up there on their header on their website. And I did it from there just to make sure that like everything was on the up and up, and I wasn't getting some like scammy link.
The last thing I'll say about that particular part of it is, don't buy, buy Carly shares or don't. Figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, of course. Genuinely, I'm totally kidding.
The fact this is on Base and it happened so quickly once Base launched is really interesting, because like what this might mean is that, maybe this L2 is a place that people are really going to start experimenting. And if we can gather an audience of size there, that is giant, because I think that honestly, that's what we needed to have for some reason, is some L2 of size that people are really experimenting and doing stuff on, because then you have a crypto world where the gas fees are very low, right? And you have a crypto world where there's all sorts of interesting DeFi, but also just like we talked about that eating website, whatever that thing is, like all sorts of Blackbird, all sorts of cool apps I can just launch in crypto without having to seem like it's a over-the-top hard thing to get into. Now, wallets are still a thing, and that's going to be tricky to figure out and everything else like that.
That was one of my initial thoughts as well, is just this is such a win for Base, because first of all, it's getting a ton of people on Base. It's getting a ton of people talking about Base. And it's actually the heart of what Base wants, which is consumer applications.
Yes.
And this is obviously what Jesse talked about, was like wanting to basically be the consumer application chain.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting. So winner out of this certainly is Base. We'll find out if the rest of us are winners out of this. But I appreciate that it's getting people talking. I think it is interesting. I really could not emphasize more that people should be very careful in here. Like, please don't go throw a ton of money on this.
No.
Just, put 20 bucks in and play around. I mean,
support people that you like for any reason.
Sure. I think Zeneca had a good point too, which is part of this is also actually the fact that this is on Base, because to withdraw from Friend.Tech and then withdraw from Base to get all your money or your ETH basically back to mainnet,
it's annoying.
It's like a 7-day process. So as you accrue money on here on Friend.Tech, you just keep it in the system, because you're like, if I'm sort of considering maybe going and buying into Derek Edwards' room, like, why not just do it? Because I've got the money there, and like alternatively, I'm gonna have to pull this money like 3 layers back to get it back to main.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the biggest thing, by the way, for Base.
Really,
that's huge
it's like
for Base.
Trapped cash in there, and that's a big win.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for Base, because honestly, what one of the hardest things to do with any L2 is get the crypto native people to buy into it in the beginning in some ways, right? And stay there.
Totally.
You know what I mean? That's great.
Totally.
I mean, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll open. I'll try it. This weekend I'm going to dive into a little bit. I have my own personal problem with my own personal self, is that I learn about things really early. I'm interested in them, and then I'm like, and then I forget to get into them. And when you get into them, you're like, oh, everybody else got into it.
Too late.
Exactly.
I know. And that was actually the last thing I was going to say is the mental health aspect of if we do enter any sort of world where like people become shares like this. I do think that's very dark. Shorting. I mean, the biggest thing this opens up is shorting shares of people. I was thinking about this. This is like in nature.
Oh,
right? Like,
no.
Well, first of all, insider trading, being like, I know something about myself, or I'm going to tank, like shorting shares of individuals, and then suddenly you're incentivized to ruin their reputation, or
it's not legal. There's no way this is legal.
You can't do that, right? You can't have a world where I can short a share of somebody and therefore be like, this Lizzo lawsuit, right? It's like somebody, it's like you would have that just to short shares of Lizzo, you would make it up. I mean, anyways, it's crazy. Okay. All right, dude, that is our show. I will not be here next Friday, but Gavin and Zeneca are going to carry the OPJ mantle. Boys night. It's going to be a boys night on Overpriced JPEGs. Yeah. Zeneca and Gavin, I really appreciate y'all doing that. And I will be back in a few weeks. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll
congratulations.
I'll when I'm a wife. I'll catch you on the other side as a Mrs. Riley.
Exactly.
I'm keeping my name because fuck knows I'm not losing my name. All right. Talk to y'all later. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.